But remember, there's always someone there for us.
Who?
My best friend and personal savior, Jesus Christ.
What? You don't believe in God?
This is Rick and Morty solving their problems by praying? Not because they think a god will solve their problems, but because they know this is something their characters would never do. And as their relatability, broad appeal, and marketability meters drain, so too does the story train. And at no point does the show seem to be aware of the irony of this at all. This is how Rick and Morty tells a joke, but it didn't used to be. This show and this show are not the same, and the real difference lies in what it thinks will make you laugh. It changed, because at some point, Rick and Morty might have gotten tired of Rick and Morty.
I barely have a reason to care, and even I notice.
So how did early Rick and Morty seasons 1 through 3 tell a joke, or maybe more accurately, structure its comedy? Well, in 4 steps. We'll call it an escalation model. Step 1, a grounded premise. Hidden at the start of most early Rick and Morty was a pretty normal sitcom setup. A dog wants respect. Parents need marriage counseling. A teenager is insecure. Grandpa is socially toxic. These are, at their core, relatable ideas. So step 2, sci-fi literalization. These emotional metaphors become actual science fiction. Or chaos, usually. The dog gets intelligence, marriage counseling turns into straight up body horror, social aggression turns to alien parasite things, and Grandpa's dysfunction breaks the multiverse. This was so important. The sci-fi wasn't built to feel random. It was emotional escalation turned physical. It was real. Then step 3, layering. Early Rick and Morty layered its comedy exceptionally well. It wasn't here's a punchline, it was about what comes after the punchline. Me Seeks and Destroy is a great example.
I'm sorry, Jerry, but it doesn't work like that.
The idea or premise is the Me Seeks will help with small chores. The punchline was essentially existence is pain. After that, it's escalation. They become violent. Then you layer in the meta with Jerry's insecurities, and then the pitch black comedy with the solution, they can't die until Jerry learns how to golf. It's comedy and existentialism and horror about the emotion of insecurity, all seamlessly layered together. And step 4, undercut the emotion.
All right, Morty, here we are.
Oh my God, Rick! Is that us? We're dead!
This is the vibe of early Rick and Morty you used to be able to point to. Early season episodes often worked their way to silent dread. The comedy would collapse on itself. Morty burying himself, or Rick failing to, well, this tonal whiplash was a big key to Rick and Morty's structure. And at the core of all of this, it then felt like cynicism with purpose, with character. It wasn't just edgy, it functioned emotionally. So start grounded, get literal, layer, undercut. That was how Rick and Morty told a joke. So how does Rick and Morty tell a joke now? Well, it's quite a bit different.
Just hit a button, Morty, give me a beat.
Oh man, okay, alright,
Here's where the show becomes what it thinks is funnier, but is really just more aware of itself. This is the later, more current seasons. There's a new joke structure here, but you can still break it down into 4 steps. Step 1, concept. A lot of later seasons episodes don't start with grounding, it's concept first. A genre parody or some kind of meta commentary or narrative deconstruction. Like Story Train. This is an episode that is really about storytelling itself. In fact, to get more Inception-y about it, it's literally in a way about Dan Harmon's own story circle narrative technique. The joke here is about structure. It's about concept. It's not really about character. Step 2, concept escalation. Instead of emotional escalation, newer Rick and Morty is more likely to escalate conceptually. So instead of saying, this is about insecurity, it becomes more, this is about audience expectation. Escalate further into concept, not into humanity. Like season 6's full meta Jack Rick, this episode literally starts already inside abstraction. What if retcons were characters? It's like a writer's room joke amongst writers, which can of course be clever and even funny, but it is obviously less human.
Okay, lumberjack slam, graham sandwich, pancake puppy, slam burger, 2 milkshakes, and an order of cheddar tots.
Step 3, stack jokes. Whereas early seasons would layer, later seasons stack. More jokes, faster jokes. Callbacks, meta comedy, multiverse gags, more self-awareness, and it is faster. So there's often less time for a quiet ending or even real consequence. The joke ends and then the next joke just starts. Mortyplicity of season 5 is a great example of this. The joke is decoys build decoys who don't know decoys are decoys. It's structurally fun, but it becomes like a logic puzzle. There's very little emotional foundation here. It's a sprint through jokes within a clever idea.
Right, good instincts. I would have tried that too.
And finally, step 4, Invincible Rick. Or using plot armor Rick to land the plane. Early Rick was so flawed, failed all the time, self-sabotaged, just straight up broke emotionally. Later Rick is harder. He wins a lot more, is always fourth wallishly aware of tropes, and just less vulnerable. He's much more of a joke vehicle. That said, when Rick doesn't feel vulnerable, jokes can lose friction, because comedy is about resistance, and Rick's vulnerability is now much more inconsistent, which, as you can guess, makes the comedy a bit inconsistent as well. So concept escalation, stack, and Rick it. There's your more modern joke structure. So how does this actually impact how the show feels to watch now versus at the start? Rick and Morty is easy to pile on, but the reality is that I don't think the show stopped being clever, it shifted priorities. But that may not have been a good thing. It started as what I felt was emotional absurdism, and turned into intellectual absurdism. That's also how I think it developed a reputation for thinking it was smarter than it sometimes was, or the joke that it's a show for smart people. Because the show originally was, oops, I made a mistake and destroyed our world, and somehow along the way became, oops, isn't it funny how serialized storytelling works? That's two very different attempts at funny, and the latter one is much, much easier to get wrong. Which is another issue. When you ground your comedy in deconstructing or being meta, you have very little margin for error, and frankly, a thinner margin for emotion and your characters. Which is why sometimes later Rick and Morty can feel a bit like a writer's room going, look how good we are at writing. It is, at its core, just less human. There was maybe an underestimation of how much people cared about the characters. But you can pose that like a question right back at the people making the show. See, it's not like the show can't still work. Season 4's Vat of Acid is a blend of all of this that I think works. Yes, it's concept, but it's emotion, it's sci-fi through a human lens, it feels like classic Rick and Morty evolved. And the show still has great episodes in those latter seasons. The show absolutely still has merit and talent behind it, even episodes that still tell a joke exactly like early Rick and Morty. But it's not that more than it is now. Why?
Why do you keep doing this to us?
I don't know, Morty. Maybe I hate myself. Maybe I think I deserve to die. I don't know.
Because the reality of Rick and Morty's situation is that clearly at some point, the writers, the showrunners, made a conscious decision that they didn't want the show to be what it was anymore. That it had more to say about ideas than people. That concepts and structure were more interesting than emotions, and in some ways, even characters. And maybe that has more to do with Justin Roiland's exits than they'd like to admit, but for me, it feels like something more disappointing. That at some point, the show outpaced its writers' own interest in it. That they themselves became bored with Rick and Morty and Jerry and the characters of this show, and slowly began using these characters as vehicles for things they found more interesting, instead of using the show as vehicles for them. And you can see this in how the show's priorities have shifted, and how it tells a joke, and how it feels now. Just because a show evolves doesn't mean it did so in the right direction. Does that mean it's time for Rick and Morty to finally end? I certainly don't know. But what I do know is,
People that spend their life avoiding death are already dead.
well, that is it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this one, press that like button down below and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And press that notification bell. That just makes sure you're actually notified when the episodes come out. And this has been